You slept 8 hours last night, full 8, and you woke up tired. Not sleepy, tired. The kind of tired that doesn't care how many hours you got. The kind that sits behind your eyes before your feet even hit the floor. You've tried the melatonin. You've tried the magnesium. You've tried going to bed earlier, cutting caffeine after noon, buying a $2,000 mattress, and you still wake up like your body is running a program it can't shut down. My name's Frank, and if you were born somewhere between 1965 and 1972, I think I know what's happening to you. Because that exhaustion you're carrying around didn't start last week. It didn't start last year. It's been building since the day you became the person everybody else depends on. And somewhere along the way, the brakes just stopped coming. You don't look exhausted, though. That's the thing. You look like you've got it handled. You show up. You pay the bills. You return the emails. You make the appointment. You pick up the prescription. You remember the birthday. You fix the thing that broke at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night when all you wanted was to sit down. And nobody in your house or your office or your family is picking up on how thin the margin has gotten. You haven't said anything. You might not even have the words for it yet. So you just keep moving, because that's what the day requires. The oldest members of Gen X, the ones born in the late 60s and early 70s, are catching every drain at the same time. And when you start listing them out, it stops being a mystery and starts looking like a math problem nobody was supposed to solve alone. Start with the job. A 2024 report from Mental Health Research Canada found that Gen X workers now report the highest levels of burnout across all generations. 42% said they feel chronically overwhelmed at work. Not occasionally stressed, chronically overwhelmed. And if you were born between 65 and 72, you're now somewhere between your early 50s and your early 60s. That means you're not the new talent. You're not the fresh perspective. In a lot of rooms, you're the person everyone assumes is 5 years from the door. A 2024 study from Resume Now found that nearly half of workers over 40 report earning less than their younger coworkers, and about 1 in 5 say their workplace regularly passes them over for challenging assignments in favor of younger staff. So you're still doing the work. You're probably doing more of it than the people being groomed to replace you. But the recognition dried up a while ago. Nobody's asking what you want to do next because they assume you're winding down. Meanwhile, you're holding the whole thing together while people half your age get the development budget and the pats on the back. And that kind of drain doesn't show up on a blood panel. It sits somewhere between your job title and your actual experience of doing the job every day. You're essential and invisible at the same time, and both of those things cost energy. Now add the second shift, because when you leave work, you don't actually leave work. You just switch to the other job, the one that doesn't pay. A 2024 study by Carewell found that 71% of middle-aged Americans are actively caregiving for both their children and their parents. And those dual caregivers, they spend an average of 37 hours a week on caregiving duties outside of their actual employment. That's nearly a second full-time job. You work 40 plus hours. Then you come home and work another 37. The math just worked out that way. Your parents are in their late 70s or 80s now. Maybe they're starting to forget things. Maybe they need rides to appointments. Maybe they've already moved in with you. And on the other side, you might still have a kid at home, or a grown kid who boomeranged back, or a kid in college who still needs the bank of mom and dad open at all hours. A Finance of America survey from late 2025 put some numbers to this. 86% of sandwich generation caregivers said they were emotionally exhausted. 80% said physically exhausted. Those numbers were up from 79 and 71% respectively just 3 years earlier, so it's accelerating. And there's a detail in that same survey worth sitting with. 26% of their parents said they hadn't planned on living this long. Your mom or dad essentially telling you that. Nobody budgeted for this chapter. Not them, not you, not the country. Everybody's improvising, and you're the one holding the clipboard while they figure it out. So you've got the job pulling from one end, the family pulling from the other, and then there's the 3 a.m. math. The part that happens when you're staring at the ceiling running numbers. Because if you were born between 1965 and 1972, retirement has stopped being a concept and started being a countdown. And for a lot of people, the countdown doesn't match the account balance. The Schroders 2025 U.S. Retirement Survey found that Gen Xers expect to need about $1.1 million to retire comfortably, but they expect to actually have about $712,000 when the time comes. That's a gap of roughly $405,000, the largest savings gap of any generation they surveyed. And only 16% said they feel like they've saved enough, which means 5 out of 6 people your age are staring at the same spreadsheet and arriving at the same quiet conclusion. Money stress doesn't stay in the spreadsheet, though. It follows you to the car. It sits in your chest when you're stuck in traffic. It shows up when your kid asks about grad school. It's there when your buddy talks about his lake house and you nod like you're on the same track. New York Life's Wealth Watch survey from 2024 found that Gen Xers saved just under $7,500 that year. Millennials, the generation younger than you, saved over $12,000. And 43% of Gen Xers were carrying credit card debt averaging more than $10,000. You were supposed to be at the peak. This was supposed to be the part where the decades of grinding finally paid off. Instead, you're doing math on a napkin, trying to figure out if you can afford to stop working at 65, or if the real number is closer to 70. Now stack all of that on top of what's happening to your actual body. A 2024 study from Arizona State University looked at roughly 200,000 Americans and found that people entering midlife right now are sleeping worse than every generation before them. About 4 in 10 midlife adults aren't getting enough sleep. And the data showed that those born in the 50s and 60s, which includes the oldest Gen Xers, are experiencing more insomnia and shorter sleep than any previous cohort at the same age. You're not imagining it. You really are more tired than your parents were at this age. Part of it is biological. Your deep sleep stages naturally shrink as you get older, but the bigger piece is structural. Your brain doesn't shut off because there's nowhere to put the list. The appointments, the bills, the parent who called twice today, the kid who hasn't called in 2 weeks, the project at work that somebody else dropped and you caught because that's what you do. All of that follows you into the pillow. And by the time your alarm goes off, your brain has been running a background process all night long. You got the hours, you didn't get the rest. 2 completely different things. I wrote something I've been meaning to write for a while, a short book called Psychology of Gen X. It traces the things you do today back to the rooms and the people that built those habits into you. If that sounds interesting, links in the description. So why does this generation, specifically the oldest slice of it, seem to be running on fumes more than anyone else? It comes down to a design flaw in how this stretch of life was supposed to work. You were the first generation to really build your career on 401ks instead of pensions. Nobody guaranteed you a finish line. You just had to hope you were disciplined enough and lucky enough and employed long enough to fund your own exit. At the same time, you hit your peak earning years right when your parents got old and your kids got expensive. And you were doing all of this while the cost of everything, housing, healthcare, education, outpaced your income by a wide margin year after year. Every one of those things alone would wear a person down. You got all of them at once, stacked on top of each other, with no gap in between. And underneath all the logistics, there's something psychological happening that a lot of people in this age range are just now starting to name. Therapists who work with Gen X men and women in their 50s are noticing a pattern. It doesn't look like depression in the clinical sense. And it doesn't look like the midlife crisis from the movies. Nobody's buying a convertible and disappearing to Cabo. It's quieter. It's the slow realization that you've been on autopilot for 20 or 30 years. You built the career, you raised the kids, you paid the mortgage, you did everything you were supposed to do. And now you're sitting in the parking lot before going inside, running through a question you've been dodging for a decade. Is this the life I actually chose, or is this just the life I maintained? Clinicians are calling it existential fatigue, a slow fade, the weariness of having performed competence for so long that wanting something for yourself started to feel like a foreign idea. And the tricky part is, you can't press pause. The people who depend on you didn't get the memo that you're running on fumes. Your parent still needs the appointment scheduled. Your kid still needs the tuition. Your boss still needs the report. The only person in the whole arrangement who doesn't get to need anything is you. And you've been doing that for so long, it stopped being a choice and started being automatic. You don't even notice it happening anymore. That's what happens when the system has no room for you to sit down. You stop expecting a chair. If you asked most people your age how they're doing, they'd say fine. Maybe tired, but fine. And they'd mean it. Because you were built to absorb, to adjust, to keep the wheels on without making a scene. And that's a real skill. It kept you employed, and it kept your family together, and it kept the whole operation running long past the point where most people would have said something. But it's also the reason you feel like this. The same wiring that kept you going is the same wiring that kept you from stopping long enough to check the gauge. So what do you do with that? Maybe you start by just naming it. Not fixing it, not optimizing it, not downloading an app or buying a supplement. Just saying it out loud to someone, or even just to yourself in the car. I'm tired, and it's been a long time coming. Psychology of Gen X came out of doing this channel and realizing there was a bigger story connecting all of these topics. If you want to take a look, it's linked below. The oldest Gen Xers are staring down 60 now. Some of you are already there. Maybe some of you just turned 61. And the conversation about exhaustion usually sounds like advice. Sleep more, exercise, meditate, take a vacation. And sure, that stuff helps. But it doesn't reach the thing underneath. You've spent your whole adult life being the anchor for other people's lives. And anchors do their job by staying at the bottom. But even an anchor gets pulled up once in a while. So take the 5 minutes, in the car, with the radio on. Nobody asking you for anything. You've been paying for those 5 minutes your whole life. Might as well collect. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.